watching the documentary, be thinking about applying what you see to what you read. Okay? Mainly the different theoretical applications have some correlation, some relevance to the documentary we're watching. Also, as we progress through the chapter, we'll see different types of deviance that can be applied across the theories and specifically in the section types of deviance. Okay. But before we proceed, I want to ask if there are any questions regarding the learning activity, any points of clarification that need to be addressed before. Is there anybody who has not found an issue to quantitatively research? Okay.
When is it due? It's due Wednesday?
It's due Wednesday, yes.
So do you have to address all the questions or
The main thing is that you identify a criminal or deviant issue, and you can apply the dependent variable aspect of the assignment along with the independent, which are measurable indicators, right? Using sociological research methodology in those applications, okay? And then 3 statistical outcomes. So you might want to do more, there might be something that just jumps out of you beyond 3 that you might want the audience to hear. So yeah, don't limit yourself to the 3. Where there may be non-applicability from the assignment are those questions at the end regarding law enforcement authorities, whether there is a solution or not, you know? Some of these things have been going on for decades, right? So with really no clear-cut solutions, right? We can numerically quantify them, we can qualitatively attempt to understand them, but eliminating or preventing a criminal issue is a social work in progress in many cases. Okay, yes?
if you're doing PowerPoint, is there anything you need to do still?
Just hand in the PowerPoint slides as we did in the first one, okay? Right. And this one's somewhat easier because you're only one individual, not having to communicate with 2.
When you say 3 statistical outcomes, what do you mean by that?
Well, like say for example, the National Safety Council reports that cell phone use while driving leads to 1.6 million crashes per year. Nearly 390,000 injuries occur each year from accidents caused by texting while driving. 1 out of every 4 car accidents in the United States is caused by texting while driving.
I see. Okay, got it.
Okay, if you put a criminal time clock process just behind that issue, right? At any given time throughout the day, approximately 660,000 drivers are attempting to use their phones while behind the wheel. Okay, so.
Got it.
Okay, and then, you know, if you can present a graphic, you know, a demographic, you know, by an independent variable, by age, class, race, gender, that makes those statistics a little more interesting.
Okay.
Okay, good question. Those of you that attended the criminal justice lecture on a week ago, last Thursday, I have the list, okay, for the Monday, Wednesday section, it's actually extra credit. So I'll add 5 points to your lowest exam score if you were in attendance, okay? So if you were in attendance and you didn't sign any list, like I said last class, you should see me after class, okay? Okay, with that, we'll move on here. On our investigative report in Phoenix, Arizona. Again, the #1 rule in class is that you should have your cell phones packed and put away.
Your mind, and or this is always what
Can I
you're gonna
have
be.
someone
And,
hit the
you know,
lights
you
back
can't
there
do
for me,
anything
please?
else, and you can't ever
Thank you.
leave. You you can't
Thank
ever
you.
get away, like I'll find you, and just crazy stuff, you know? And like you believe it, like you believe what they say. In that moment, like it sounds believable, like nobody will love you past this, nobody will see past this, sounds believable. So you just believe it, and then you just go and you think and you hope that things will get better, and then they never do. You're just there, and then one day you wake up and it's years later and you're not even the same person.
Like many victims of sex trafficking, Mariah says she was too scared to tell the police, so nothing ever happened to the men who trafficked her.
This is Brian Alexander Martinez Aguilar.
But because Kat did work with the police, they were able to arrest not just the traffickers, but one of the men who paid to have sex with her.
And the laws changed also that it wasn't a defense for them to say if they were buying sex from someone. I don't know how old they are. We now, in Arizona, if the person's under 18, they're getting charged with child sex trafficking just like a trafficker would.
The man gave detectives evidence that helped corroborate Kat's story.
Sir, in light of the fact that you entered into a guilty plea in this matter, you've waived your right to direct appeal.
He took a plea deal and got 3 years probation. Deterring customers has been a big part of the anti-trafficking effort in Phoenix. The detectives do undercover work on the streets.
Nice to meet you. What are you looking for? Sex? Sex, I'll see.
They then arrest the men for the crime of soliciting prostitution.
Human trafficking only perpetuates because there's a customer base. If we had no customers, we had no demand, there would be no trafficking. It's simple economics.
Is this everybody?
On this day, the detectives are planning a week-long crackdown on potential buyers.
We're going to do a hotel reversal operation today.
When I first started, we would arrest Johns all the time. We would do undercover operations. We would give them a ticket and send them on their way. Then we changed our policy of how we deal with them. They don't just get a ticket, they get booked, their photo gets taken. It becomes a little bit more of a deterrent.
Deals all off that and do it just like we were doing the website.
Instead of working the streets, the unit is using online ads and a website it's set up to attract targets.
So the decoys that will be posting ads are Amber, Evelina, Christy, Amanda, Melissa, Heidi.
They schedule appointments for sex acts in downtown hotels.
Yes, it is. What can I do for you? Yes, I charge, but different things cost different prices, period. What were you looking for, question mark?
Or what do we say, $60 for a quickie?
That sounds like a challenge.
Oh, Daddy Dog, edgy.
This is a full-time job for sure.
There's a lot of customer base. There's a lot of demand.
It just wants to be tied up by a girl his age.
There is some stuff on the streets, but it's not as prominent as it is on the internet.
This is like fish in a barrel, right here. It's like throwing chum off the boat.
We had developed a program where we were posting ads and we were really collecting all the data of everyone that was contacting us, and phone numbers, who was visiting the website.
What do you want to do with my boobs?
Every single time we have a huge portion of the same people contacting our undercover ads.
Kitty and ass play, nothing uncovered. Can talk more about that when you get here. Period. Were you looking for BJ, question mark? If so, I don't do it uncovered, so could you get the flavored ones, question mark? Getting on the phone and talking to men, just being so vulgar, is a major shift. Sounds like you and I are going to have a fun afternoon, period. Fetishes, though, are extra, so I don't know what you had in mind. Now I have my husband calling. Hello? I'm at the extended stay during the hotel rehearsal. All right, I'll call you later. Hi, about my kids? Oh, by the way, with how much more
our job.
I don't know who this guy is, but he's pretty aggressive. That sounds illegal. There's a lot more fetishes and deviant behavior that's requested of the women. And that scares me, just because I hear what they're asking of me, so I know they're asking the same thing of somebody who's actually being trafficked.
People think that they're paying for something so they can use and abuse and do whatever they want. Because they believe that no one will care, no one will report it, nobody's gonna miss them, which unfortunately often is true.
Are you still on your way? I'm ready for you, period. This guy's gonna be here in 40 minutes, the other guy's gonna be here in 45 minutes. Okay, and we just learned that our arrest team is in position. Are we good to go with this?
We're good to go.
Our guy was supposed to be here 15 minutes ago. 15 minutes. Hey girl, he's here for you. Almost every single male that I interact with, the first thing they want to say is, whoa, no.
I've got your back.
No. I didn't know. I had no part in it. The girls I interact with are not trafficking victims.
I guess I would think that was probably more so in maybe other countries.
Oh, if someone was under control of him doing it forcefully, I wouldn't be interested in it. None of the men arrested in the operation were engaged in sex trafficking, but the detectives wanted to send a message.
But human trafficking could very well have been what you just walked into. And because human trafficking is so prevalent here in Arizona, our requirement went from a simple ticket to send you on your way to now being booked into jail.
When we arrest them and their lives are completely shattered because they've now, their pictures end up on websites or they end up on the news and their wives find out because their cars have been towed. I have seen more grown men crying as a result of being arrested for this crime than any other crime. I don't think Johns are held nearly as accountable as what they should be. I think it's so rare for us to, as investigators, to actually find the Johns and have the evidence necessary to prosecute them.
Though a John is cooperating in Kat's case, it's taking a long time to be resolved.
Anytime we do these cases, we want to get a photo of what the victim looked like at the day that they were recovered. We want to be able to show a jury, because from the time she's recovered to the time it goes to trial, her appearance could change drastically. And so this was the photo that was taken of Kat.
With Kat's help, the detectives have been accumulating evidence against the three men accused of trafficking her.
She's got an impeccable memory, and we were able to find some really great surveillance footage. We also have obviously the hotel records for the various hotels she pointed out. We have bedding, some sheets that we'll be sending out for DNA testing, and we have a couple of cell phones, but one of the most important cell phones is Raphael's cell phone.
But after a year, there has been little progress in court.
Case management conference in 2 matters, state versus.
The three defendants, Jesse Cisneros, Rafael Quiros, and Brian Flamate, have appeared at more than a dozen preliminary hearings.
It's painstakingly long sometimes, the time between the arrest and the time that we see a suspect in trial. And we just don't have any control over that.
Kat has repeatedly come face to face with the three men, and it's taking a toll.
I just don't know if I have enough strength inside of me to continue doing and being involved in the case anymore. This should have been over a long time ago.
The victim's cooperation, and Kat in this case, is absolutely imperative for us to move forward. Without a victim, there's no crime. Unfortunately, that's the way the justice system works when we're talking about sex trafficking. So if Kat was not to participate in this case, the suspects would be out and we'd be done.
After living at the Dream Center for 9 months, Kat has moved back home with her family.
It's hard to be a parent and not
Look at these nails.
be able to fix what hurts your kid. She has to get past all this, and she can't get past all of it when it keeps dragging on. I sent this to the prosecutors. I've realized through this process why victims do not report things or trust our justice system. My daughter's a strong person, but even the strong can only take so much. She says she's okay, but as her parents, we know she is not. She's stuck in the trauma of a 16-year-old girl.
As the case has been developing, Kat's therapist, Carla Grace, is helping prepare her to take the witness stand at trial.
So Kat, as we get closer, so you just let me know kind of how you're feeling, and if things start getting more activated, just let me know.
With any client, prep time to be able to stand and to be cross-examined. I think that's one of the most difficult, vulnerable times. And, you know, can she do it? I mean, not today, but knowing that that could be down the road, then there's a lot of things to do to prepare for it.
Kat has asked Carla to take her back to the scene of the crime.
I haven't been over here since everything happened.
See, like right now, I got a scale of 0 to 10.
Like a 7.
Yeah, if there's a certain point where you're just like, okay, this is close enough, just let me know.
You go straight.
So where are you now?
I'm scared.
0 to 10?
8. There's one at the top of the stairwell. The room is 206. This was the room where Brian choked me for the first time. I just got out of the shower. And he said I was being disrespectful because I didn't want to do nothing. And so I started getting lippy with him, and he grabbed me by my throat and pushed me onto a little coffee table that's in there. And he told me that I was his bitch, so he didn't care.
After 2.5 years, there's finally a break in Kat's case. She won't have to go through the ordeal of a trial after all. One of the accused traffickers, Jesse Cisneros, has agreed to cooperate with prosecutors in hopes of reducing his sentence.
He was able to corroborate a lot of what Kat had told me. He was able to talk to me about the hotels that she was taken to. He gave me the information on some customers that she had been with, who posted the ads, who took the photos.
Took pictures. Everything was on my phone.
Basically corroborated everything I already had with Kat. And after he signed the testimonial agreement, plea deals started happening.
All 3 of the men accused of trafficking Kat would end up taking plea deals, sparing her from having to testify at any of their trials.
I'm hoping she can really just kind of put it behind her and focus on going forward. Had we taken this case to trial, they would have spent likely, the rest of their lives in prison or pretty close to it. Showing up to court every month and having to face these people.
The men would still have to go to court for a judge to determine their sentences. In March 2019, Kat arrived at the courthouse in Phoenix. Jesse Cisneros was going to be sentenced.
Thank you. Please be seated. I'm happy that the trial's not going through. That should be the one thing that I get out of all of this is just the right to happiness, you know.
Your Honor, the victim would like to speak.
She had decided she wanted to read a statement.
I've been waiting for this moment for almost 3 years. And I just want to say the right words. I want to say words that will stick with them for a really long time. I wanted to speak today because I really need this to come to an end. For the past 3 years, I've gone through more than any young adult should ever have to go through. Court date after court date, I was forced to see the defendants denying their actions, knowing very well they knew what they had done to me. It has affected me and my family as well as everyone around me. In multiple instances, the defendants beat me, sexually assaulted me, starved me, and let other strange men do the same. They would hold me down, and when I would beg for them to stop, they would cover my mouth and laugh at the fact that they were hurting me. Doing something like this to a person is inhumane, and when they were doing it, they thought about no one but themselves. I'm gonna have to deal with this for the rest of my life.
You've seen the victim and you've seen the harm that he caused. The fact that she was treated like property, the fact that she was beaten and her life was threatened daily is not something that should be forgotten in this case. And what the state finds the most reprehensible about this case is that Mr. Cisneros saw no difference between trading drugs in society and trading victims and females, such as the victim in this case.
Thank you. Mr. Cisneros? Mr. Cisneros, anything you want to say on your own behalf?
I don't expect their forgiveness, but I would like them to know that deeply I'm sorry and would like them to just be able to move on from this.
Well, Mr. Cisneros, unfortunately, I've had a number of cases like this. I'm frankly shocked. I mean, to abduct a child and force her into committing sex acts for money, difficult to think of something more despicable than that. That's just, I mean, it's very disturbing. It's very disturbing. The victim in this case described it as inhumane, and I think that that's a good way to describe it. You and your co-defendants preyed on a child and used her to make money in the worst possible way that I can think of by performing sex acts against her will. It's really a disturbing situation, as all these cases are. The impact that this has had on the victim is obviously the strongest aggravating factor in this matter. She's going to have to live with this the rest of her life, no matter what happens. This is going to be something she's going to have to carry with her, and it's going to be a burden.
The judge gave Cisneros 24 years for child sex trafficking and other charges. At his hearing, Rafael Quiros was given 10 years, and Brian Flamate 16 years. They will all be on lifetime sex offender probation due to new anti-trafficking laws in Arizona.
It didn't hit me until probably like that night at probably like 3 in the morning, 4 in the morning. I just started crying, and it was over nothing. And it was just like, I think it was just my body telling me like, you can breathe, you know, it's finally over. Like, you can live your life, you don't have to worry anymore, you know.
Since Phoenix began its new approach to sex trafficking, it has seen victories, but also new challenges.
So there isn't really a centralized place for us to go and look right now to help us find the victims.
Backpage, the most popular website for sex traffickers, was shut down.
So now we're just trying to figure out where everybody's going. So these new websites have popped up. Bedpage, which is almost an exact replica of Backpage. Then we've got One Backpage. Basically, it's all of these different websites now that we don't have
any agreements or search tools with, and they've kind of spread out. So we don't have a certain location to go look for them anymore, and then it's kind of a crapshoot.
There always seems to be this urgency to take things down, to make it inconvenient for the traffickers. But when you do that, there's always unintended consequences. So you take down Backpage, and then, you know, there's more trafficking on the street, it becomes more violent. So he choked you out because you wouldn't work?
Yeah. He come out of nowhere, punched me in the jaw, choked me. I've been raped. He did cocaine.
Just be careful with my head. I got beat up real bad this morning.
You got jumped this morning. The activity out here is more than we've ever seen in our careers. And we're seeing a lot of girls, young girls, out here on the streets now.
What's your first name?
Nadia. Honestly, hon, you don't look like an adult to me. You look very young.
A lot of freaking cops just for nothing.
I think the thing that's getting harder and harder for us is to figure out where victims are. Our work is constantly having to shift, evolve, and we are having to adapt to what the traffickers are doing with their victims. It's like a cat and mouse game.
I think it's the old-fashioned cops and robbers, and we're reacting, obviously, and we're going to change with how they change, but the wheel goes round and round in law enforcement.
Melissa's been working this guy for 2 or 3 days now.
I just got an okay, but he said not till 9, and that's in 13 minutes, so his life is gonna change in 13 minutes.
For the detectives in Phoenix, the fight against sex trafficking goes on.
Go to pbs.org/frontline for more on the changing landscape of sex trafficking.
Previous to the internet, traffickers had to work to build a relationship to get that trust from those victims.
And who is at risk?
We're seeing more and more girls because the trackers have access to them through their phones and through the internet.
Then visit the Frontline archive where you can stream more than 200 Frontline documentaries. Connect to the Frontline community on Facebook, Twitter, and pbs.org/frontline.
They're paying into a pension that the state promised was going to be there.
They have effectively raided pension funds. The bill will come due.
Many pension funds take on more risk. They're trying to gamble their way out of the problem. Get the New York money managers out of my pension!
This is
Another type of crime. Could we have the lights, please? Thank you. So, I think if there can be mandatory minimums for drug offenses, I think it would be more applicable in cases like this, you know, when you're violating the rights of first children, right? And other human beings, right? In this whole process of one of the oldest crimes in the book, as they say, right? And as the officer stated, just like other illegal activity in society, right? As long as there's a demand, there are, despite it seems all this get tough on crime, the issues continue, right? And you know, what's the deterrent, right? Many European nation states, as I discussed before, have decided to legalize prostitution. Is that step process in social change, you know, what we might see in our lifetime regarding systematic processes that continue to not work, right? If we legalize what we put, you know, the illegal traffickers, the illegal process involving these types of crimes out of business, you know, again, some of those $1 million questions, you know, regarding. The other thing for the victims is, as we saw in the case of several of those profiled, is what we call intergenerational or historical trauma. And despite the fact that the victim, especially Kat, who cooperated fully through the entire investigation, through the court process till these guys were sentenced, it seemed relieved at the end of the ordeal, but it's probably, like, as a commentator emphasized, not gonna go away, right? As we call this intergenerational or historical trauma. You know? And many times we see that in later impacts on life, right? Such as suicide, depression, other mental illnesses correlated with the historical experience that the victims go through, right? And again, we talk about in a couple of minutes the symbolic interactive theory of labeling, right? And now these new methods in policing the internet, as we clearly saw, right? And again, social media being a big part of victims being followed, right? Or victims being profiled on the internet, right? As I've said before, you gotta be careful with who you communicate with in this process, right? So labeling theory has come to light in correlation to these sex offender websites, right? You can, as a result of the incident involving a case involving a male named Adam Walsh, who was a victim of a hate crime, sexually assaulted, right? We have these lists that have been created, right? And when you go to certain websites, like if you go to the Adam Walsh Act, right, there's a site there where you enter in your zip code, and lo and behold, all the convicted sex